The Martian 2015. This is one of my all-time favourite movies. I read the book slightly before it became proper famous. I was just looking at books on the Kindle on the Amazon website, and on the "if you like this you might like this" section I saw The Martian. Never heard of it before. Clicked on it. I read the description, the one-liner that a man is trapped on Mars for 4 years and has to survive. And instantly it was yes, yes, yes. I'm very, very interested. It was only 77 pence, and it had a note at the bottom saying this book will be removed from sale in 2 weeks' time because it has been bought by a professional publisher. So this is a big deal, popular book that has attracted the self-published book that has attracted the attention of a real publisher. Very promising. So I bought it for 77 pence a week or two before it was taken off of sale because it was going to be replaced. I read the book. I thought, well, that's probably one of the very best books I have ever read. That was awesome. That was absolutely fascinating and brilliant and just remarkable. Just blew my mind at just how good it was, and I recommended it to a whole bunch of people. The book eventually turned up about 4 or 5 months later, published professionally. I bought a copy as a present for someone. To the best of my knowledge, it's the same book that has been professionally published, although I wouldn't be surprised if there's been a few alterations, with a professional editor just helping to clarify stuff. And so I read it, and I knew at the time, I said to myself, this would make an awesome movie. Not only would this be an awesome movie, this would be a blockbuster. This would not just be an obscure art movie or a $20 million independent film. This was something that a Hollywood studio would make and would stick the biggest star in, like Tom Cruise or Will Smith. And it would be one of the big hits of the summer. The book, the author was brilliant at the scientific stuff, but he's not a very good writer of people. His understanding of people was a wee bit limited. And now people complained about that the characters were not exactly deep. But I don't think that was actually a mistake or a problem with the book. The book was not the art house version of a man searching it deep into his soul with fear and loneliness. It wasn't about the dark tea time of the soul. The story was about a man just using science to survive. It was quite surface level, but it was surface level on purpose, and in the way in which he was telling the story in the big budget Hollywood version of it. This was not the art house version of this story. This was the big Hollywood version of it. So I read it and I thought, this will make a massive, epic blockbuster movie. Will be one of the biggest hits of the summer. And I believe shortly after I thought this, it was announced that Fox had bought the rights to the book and they were turning it into a movie. And then a little after that I heard that, Matt Damon's going to be starring in it. I thought, okay, I would never have thought of Matt Damon, but you know what? That sounds right, that sounds good. I have no problems with that. And I also heard that Ridley Scott had signed on to direct, and it's a case of, well, he's already got Alien and Blade Runner to his name. 2 movies which I personally don't actually like all that much. Yes, I don't actually think Alien's all that great. I've just never really enjoyed it. Much preferred Aliens. And Blade Runner to me is just such a failure as a story. The production design might be great, but the story is just so vague and gauzy and impenetrable and hard to get to. Anyway, Ridley Scott's went on to make much more conventional storytelling choices in his later movies. So, anyway, to hear that Ridley Scott was making this was a case of, oh, that's good news. At the very least, you're going to get some very nice visuals. So, the movie was released. I went to the cinema to see it, and it was very, very, very good. I was very satisfied with it. The only thing I would have said was that the visuals were not what I expected. I saw the movie, and for the first, say, 10 or 20 minutes, I was expecting the visuals to be very different to this. When I read the book, I was picturing really dark red sand on the ground and the sky to be nighttime black with stars. And as you can see here, it's kind of just like normal sort of browny red sand and normal thin atmosphere, daytime atmosphere. So it wasn't visually what I was expecting. But after 10 or so minutes, I got over that and just went with it. And I thought the movie was excellent. I loved it. Thought it was really, really good. And so I have now watched it again. So subsequently, I have one complaint with the movie, and that is that the climax goes on a bit. It's a bit laborious. It's not that the climax is bad. It's just that you've basically had a 3-act story. He gets off Mars, into orbit, and then after that, there's a big, laborious, involved action sequence of getting onto the spaceship, and it goes on a bit. It's quite a long sequence, and it's simply because of where it is in the movie. It's right at the end where a movie would normally pick up pace, but this drags it out. It's just at this point in the movie you kind of just want it to get over and done with and finish. So I did think when I did watch it previously that, you know what, at this point I should just pause the movie, get up, stretch, do some other stuff for 5 or 10 minutes and then come back a wee bit fresher to it and just take Act 4 as a separate sequence in its own right. And that's what I did on this viewing. I put it aside for 5 minutes, came back a wee bit fresher, stretched my legs, and then watched the rescue sequence on its own, and it worked much better that way. So I think this movie, there's basically nothing wrong with the movie. It is just it's such a great story, and it's a really competent, really well written script, and it's well acted, it's well directed, everything's good, all the technical aspects are good, all the artistic aspects are good, everything is good, there are no failures at any point, there's no weak link, there's no issues, everything is just perfectly fine and dandy. There is nothing to complain about, apart from the pacing gets a wee bit slow at the very end with the rescue sequence. It's basically a perfect movie. Apart from that slight issue with the pacing being maybe a wee bit slow at the very end, I can't think of any other complaints. It's just clearly no assholes got involved in this film. The idiots, the people who play corporate politics and all the rest of it, office politics, and grind productions to a halt with their stupidity and their bad behaviour, or developing scripts for years on end and making them worse instead of better. All the petty stuff you hear about in Hollywood, clearly none of that happened on this. Clearly this was a case of, this is a goal project from day one. We all want to make it. We're going to throw stacks of money at it. We're going to make a proper high quality production with no financial restrictions. So they can have the time and have the money to do it proper, and we're not going to get stymied by having stupid executives make weird decisions and slow things down. And so clearly it's just a really competently made movie. So I think the movie is pretty close to perfect. So I would give this 10 out of 10 And if you've never read the novel, seriously, you should think about reading the novel. Sorry, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the novel that's not in the movie, because there's a lot more pages, a lot more problems, a lot more detail on how he deals with the problems. So one of the greatest books ever written, in my opinion. One of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. One annoyance I have had in the past is that every time it says Saul number whatever, there is a ping on the soundtrack, and I have always been distracted by that ping because it brings to mind the song Echoes by Pink Floyd from the album Metal. Every time I hear that ping, I would get distracted because I would be thinking, you know, someone should do a YouTube video where they edit material from this film and put it to the 23-minute Pink Floyd song. On this viewing, I did not feel that. It's as though the ping just didn't exist anymore. I just didn't notice it, and I was not distracted. I have Artemis, but I have not read it, and I have read Hail Mary, which is excellent, and it's a bit more challenging to adapt, but if they can find the right way to do it, it could also make a proper big, large-scale Hollywood blockbuster like The Martian. Andy Weir is a very good writer. His characterisation might not exactly be the deepest and the best, but if you think of it in terms of Hollywood blockbusters, his characters are perfectly fine. And although Hail Mary is a more tricky one to adapt, it does have the potential to be another great big Hollywood blockbuster